Hey, Chaden, it's Leah Voicey, the Clown Cafe singer from Terrifier 2. I hear that soon you are going to be reviewing Terrifier 1 with Dan on your show Exiled Entertainment. So cool. I'm sure that was inspired by the fact that Terrifier 1 is coming to theaters soon. Are you excited? Because I'm definitely excited. I know I'm going to see it. And I wanted to thank you so much for being a fan of Terrifier 1 and Terrifier 2 and my YouTube channel. Much, much appreciated. I'm definitely going to be bringing a lot of horror content soon, including more convention vlogs, which, speaking of which, I am actually heading to a convention right now. I'm going to Kansas City to a convention called Crypticon. It's going to be very, very fun. And hopefully one day I can meet you at a convention as well. But keep loving horror, keep loving Terrifier, keep working on Exiled Entertainment. I'd love to check it out sometime, and I hope you have a good day. Bye, Chayton.
Drop by the Clown Cafe, your favorite meals on wheels. The menu is disgusting and it's full of special deals. Nothing here is good for you, so grab yourself a tray, 'cause food's a little funny at the Clown Cafe.
And the Clown Cafe, drop on by. No.
Welcome
It's
to
a catchy ass song. It's the only thing my mom will like about the movie. She'll never watch either movie, but she likes the song. She wants me to sing almost every day.
Welcome everyone to Exiled Entertainment, and I think this would be a special episode, right?
Yes.
As you saw the cameo, I don't know who graciously purchased that for you, but that was very sweet of them.
Member of the house. Leave it at that. The person wanted to remain anonymous. But it's a podcast listener, so they know I do YouTube.
Well, thank you very much to the anonymous person who did that. That was very sweet of you to do that. You have been trying to get me to watch this movie for quite a while, and I did. And this is your show, so I have thoughts. But tell the world why you love Terrifier, which is going to be in theaters soon.
Yes. This episode will be on the Wednesday before. So when you see this episode, a week from now will be when Terrifier hits theaters for the first time. It was only it was basically on straight to DVD, streaming, all this other stuff. I found it through Netflix. It was originally on Netflix where I first saw it. And I recognized the clown because there was a movie, an anthology movie that came out couple of years prior called All Hallows Eve, and it had this. It was basically the anthology film was centered around this clown.
Well, and let's talk about this clown. He's not just a clown. His name is Art, and if we're talking about All Hallows Eve, which I got to get in a pretty good chunk of that, Art is not your typical clown. I mean, I would call him, and I did my research. The main character, Art, the actor, he actually was a mime.
Yes, and actually, David Howard Thornton, he was not in the original All Hallows Eve. That was actually a different actor. He didn't come in until Terrifier, and now he's kind of become the quote unquote main. Like everybody looks at him as Art, which is true because again, he was a mime and all that.
Well, and if you when I watched All Hallows Eve, I wanted to, like I said, I watched Terrifier first. And I went back and watched All Hallows Eve because, just like yourself, I'm when it comes to this stuff, I want to get all my facts straight. And what I found interesting is that this is very much a series that is a throwback to the 80s horror style. There is some twists, and I'm sure you'll get to that. But as we move on with this episode, I didn't like it at first. I found it to be overly gruesome. But that I was overanalyzing it as you and I both do. I was trying to find, the theatrical brilliance of a film that you kept telling me about, but it wasn't the first, it wasn't the second, it was probably the third time that I sat down and I stopped, I took that analytical hat off and I put on the just enjoying it for what it is, a gore fest of fun. And that's what it is. It's a giant gore fest of fun. All Hallows Eve, basically, it's a bunch of short films with the overall premise of a babysitter taking care of some kids, and they find a blank tape, a la via The Ring, and there's a bunch of different scenarios on this tape, and all of them in some way, shape, or form are kind of surrounded by art.
Yeah, and these movies are all, like, especially these are all short films from years prior that Damien Leone, the director of that movie, this movie, and Terrifier 2, and soon to be Terrifier 3, he made these kind of as like rough drafts and all that, and then they decided to make it into an anthology film, which again, then it's crazy how this has evolved from just that into its own like franchise as well as its own fan base. Like we mentioned earlier, this is a throwback to like the grindhouse exploitation films of the 80s and 70s.
I would even go beyond that. If we're going back, right? Like, and I think we've talked about it many times. The Shape character from the original Halloween series was Wes Craven. No, what's Wes Craven?
John Carpenter.
John Carpenter.
Wes Craven in Nightmare on Elm Street.
John Carpenter. When you see the very first Michael Myers, right? It's very gruesome. Not something like Psycho. If you watch Psycho, there's blood, there's scenes, and there's a lot of innuendo, and a lot of people call that the first
slasher.
But I believe didn't Halloween come out first?
No, Psycho came out first.
Okay,
came out in the 60s. So
watching Halloween, it took me back to that a little bit. Sprinkled a little bit of that Saw brutality in it.
Yeah, and it threw me back to like also like the Last House on the Left, which is a Wes Craven film, the original, as well, which is his first film, I believe. And then I Spit on Your Grave. Those like very dirty, grimy movies, and just about like, and it's funny because you would think, and we'll get into it, but you would think that certain things in this movie would like turn a lot of the female demographic off. And I've talked about this before. When I went to go see Terrifier 2 in theaters, it was like the majority of the audience, it wasn't like a complete packed house, but the majority of the audience was women. And I've said they were fine ass women. They were and they were in there decked in Art the Clown merch, Terrifier merch. They weren't just coming in there like jumping in for curiosity. Cause I'm sure the reason why the second one, and we'll go like whenever we talk about the second one, I do also want to discuss how successful that movie was with the budget it had. And brace yourselves, because that's like a almost 2.5 hour movie, Terrifier 2. Damien Leone literally put everything in his like his whole wheelhouse. He put it all in that movie.
Well, and I'll say so this, you could tell that this movie was made with the premise that this was just them throwing it together, that they probably never thought in a million years that it would be as popular as it was. The second one, which again, I don't want to take away from this movie and talk too much about that one, but from like what I've seen of it, you could tell there's definitely a story to it. They're trying to piece things together a little better. This was just basically a snuff film, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fucking underlining humor that does not belong in a horror movie, but it works in this. Like I said, I'm not as versed with the names of the director and the actors in this movie, but I came in as a fan, and that'll always be your niche. You'll always be able to name directors and actresses and actors off the top of your head. You're brilliant. I love that about you. I'll say that, and this is not I know you and him are on good terms, but I'll always compare you to Jordan in that regard from the Rat and Rave podcast. He can name a pay-per-view and a fucking match and a wrestler and from 1998 to fucking 95 just off the top of his head. I think that's incredible how y'all can pull that off. but
Oh, yeah.
your realm has always been theater and movies, and but yeah, the guy in Terrifier 1, the one who continued with the rest after All Hallows Eve, he makes the character his own. And you can tell, like, when I found out he was at one point a professional mime, I could believe it. Art comes off, and again, I'm sure you'll go into the beginning of the movie, but this is just basically my synopsis to kind of give people a sample of somebody who wasn't going to ever watch this movie, and only reason I ever watched it was because of you. There's a charisma to the character. If you're looking, I can see why women would come and be it, because he's funny in a terrifying way, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, and and again, it's like, I kind of look at like All Hallows Eve as the concept for this character, and then you could even say the first movie could be a concept of
Absolutely.
of where they would go. I think Terrifier 2 is basically the amalgamation of All Hallows Eve and Terrifier into that, and that's why I said I think the goal, just to give you a timetable, we're thinking about talking about the second one in about what do you call it? Probably in Halloween time, which would be the 1-year anniversary from when this movie came out of Terrifier 2. But with Terrifier 1, again, I went into it. I heard little rumblings of it. I wasn't like, so wasn't as big as like it later became. And I was even going to people who, due to a certain scene in the movie, which we'll get into, and I was talking to some women about it because I was wanting their opinion on it because they liked the movie and all that. So I wanted their opinion on it because there was some controversy from this movie. Had a lot of controversy due to the exploitation of women, right? And I told that we were talking about it, and they were like, "No, I like the scene. I thought it was, horrifying, and all that." And I've always said that is the goal of horror, is to scare you in some way, shape, or form. It could make you laugh or make you laugh kind of chuckling of a dark scene or something. But that was the goal. That's the goal of the movie as a whole. A horror movie is to scare you. And
let me ask you this, because I would consider you, and I say this with all the respect in the world, I would consider you a horror aficionado. You are just that guy. I know that you like movies. We've discussed that your cinema collection into detail, but I want to know. I mean, I'm not the biggest horror fan. I like psychological movies that make you think, but for me, the third time watching it, I was like, I really appreciate the film for what it is. Again, we eventually are going to do our grade of this movie. When I give my rating on it, it's going to be what I think other people would think of it, bar none, as far as that. But as far as horror aficionados, I think you're like the end all be all when it comes to that. And for someone who's not as well known as, say, any other movie critic or a Rotten Tomatoes or someone like that, you have a very good eye for talent. But what was it about this movie that brought you, so much joy? What was it that brought you to the forefront of think that this is a big deal, which has become? But what made you think that initially?
Well, to be fair, I'm a sucker for like the throwbacks of certain eras. I feel like, especially during periods of like the last maybe 5 years, they've kind of gone back to stepping or up in the ante. And I'm always a person who loves practical effects, for example. And like the last time that there was a franchise like this where it was kind of like a throwback to this was the Hatchet movies with Kane Hodder.
Yeah.
And again, over the top, gory, all that stuff. And even though it had 4 or 3 sequels after that, it didn't really, you had your niche audience, but it didn't have that fan base. Like the first movie came out in theaters after I just went straight DVD and really kind of got forgotten about.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually thinking about that. This is strange. This is a weird anomaly with this movie because, like you said, the Hatchet films, Kane Hodder himself, Mr. Jason Voorhees, he was the lead in that as far as the Butcher. But you And I noticed something about this flick that it's caught fire. I mean, it's very rare that a film like this goes straight to DVD, and then that second entry, bam, like they're in it. People are fans. You saw plenty of the female demographic, which is interesting, come to see this movie. What would you equate that to?
Like, I'm trying to think of something because, like, you know, as someone also who's a fan of independent film and I want independent filmmakers to be able to do something like this, because, like I said, who would have thought that Damien Leone's, like, his first movie would not be coming in theaters, his second film would be coming in theaters, it would do gangbuster numbers for, again, the budget. It's going to be and to the point where they could release the original movie for the first time in theaters. And I'm very curious how that movie. I'm not worried about losing money because this movie was not made for that much. I think the second film was made for like $250,000. That was also, mind you, that majority of that money was a Kickstarter. That wasn't even like, oh yeah, I have all this money I can just throw that I made from Terrifier I can just throw into this movie to make it in theaters. No, it was a Kickstarter, especially certain scenes, like, for example, the girl from Leah from the Clown Cafe. That scene was basically funded. That was the one of the main scenes that was funded by that Kickstarter thing. And you'll see it once you see the movie. But I really don't know, because it's some of these instances, they're unexplainable because you have all these other unique horror films out there that don't get a lot of attention. Like, there's a movie, and one day I actually want to talk about it. It was a movie with CM Punk called Girl on the Third Floor. And I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but I really enjoyed that movie. I thought he did really well because he was basically by himself in the entire movie. To me, you have to be some type of decent actor to run a film on your own and not have really too many people to go with you and act alongside you.
Well, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Do you think that it's the character of Art that makes the movie? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think if the actor who played Art if there was anybody else, if it wasn't for Art makes for me the movie. Like, he as the character, his antics and the way he not just the disturbing things he does, but his delivery and like the little subtleties, like you're terrified when he frowns at you, but you kind of laugh when he smiles. I don't know. He's blood-drenched teeth, his white face paint. He doesn't look like a typical clown. If anything, he looks like an amalgamation of a clown and a mime. You know, his little cat. I mean, there's so many little subtle things. What is it? Do you think it's Art himself that makes these movies?
I do. I think it is because, like, one of the criticisms of this movie was, I guess, the acting. But again, I have to go back and say that the act, like, again, throwing back to those old movies, especially even going further in like Giallo and fucking like Giallo films like Pieces and all that, the Italian horror movies from back in the day. Those were not great acted movies. So earlier, a girl just says, bastards, like basically in the same way I'm saying it right now, very not like just overacting, all that other stuff. So the acting was like, and the plot, like a lot of the issues that people had with this movie were rectified in the follow-up. But I truly believe if it wasn't like Art being such a unique looking character, not just by his mannerisms, but how he looks, is what made people go back to it. And again, David Howard Thornton, I think if it was anybody else, I don't know if this movie would have caught fire as it does now. You know, because again, back when it came out, it was very controversial due to the graphic nature and just all that. But again, like you discussed earlier, you have people analyzing the film, or even people analyzing the film in terms of the mindset, like and questioning things. Like I said, once you see the second one, you're going to kind of have a bunch more questions in that one. That's my one critique, is that because I think Damien Leone said, "Oh, we're going to explain certain things." And I'm like, part of me doesn't want to explain, but I kind of want to know certain things, and all that. But like regarding Art himself, I think if it was anybody else, I don't, because we've got so many different killers, like in movies, that don't get any recognition. Perfect example, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is a mockumentary about a serial killer where basically Michael, Freddy, Jason live in the universe, and Robert Englund plays like a fucking doctor, fucking, damn it, I'm losing train of thought about the doctor from fucking Halloween.
Loomis.
But what do you call it? That's the whole thing with that. You know, that movie was very, very unique, but it got a cult following, yes, but it didn't get the abundance of love compared to like this.
With that being said, without further ado, Jayden, tell us about Terrifier.
Oh yes, Terrifier is about like two girls coming from a Halloween party, getting stranded, and being hunted by a mysterious entity known as Art the Clown. And of course, one of the more iconic scenes is when he comes in at the beginning or at the pizza diner, does the smiling, stands there, looks at you, doesn't say anything. And one other thing, we talked about the mime thing. When he's in pain, I also like that when he's in pain, he does not say anything.
Well, and I want to make an observation. I noticed that's one of the things I saw with him as a character. Whether he's laughing, whether he's in pain, Art never makes a sound. I mean, like you can hear him walking, whatever. There's no screaming. There's no laughing. You just see the physical facial gestures. And I thought that was a very unique way to go. I don't see him as a clown. I see him more as a mime.
Yeah, that's one that gets the one inconsistencies of that, because he's more of a mime than he is a clown, to be quite honest. But maybe the name Art the Clown is sexier than Art the Mime.
Fair enough, but I mean, like he does wear the floppy shoes. He does, he is wearing a clown's getup, but it's very monotone. But Art has that calling card, and one thing I think you may have glossed over in the beginning is that when he's in the pizzeria before he sits down, what he did to the bathroom.
Oh yes. Spelling his name when shit.
And no, literally, and I know you heard him say that, but I want you to understand, like Art's calling card is he goes and he destroys shit with shit. Like,
yes,
he went into the bathroom and shit all over the bathroom and wrote his name in shit on the wall.
In a way, Art is like the more fucked up embodiment of Heath Ledger's Joker in regards to being an agent of chaos. Not in terms of Joker, the overall character, but the agent of chaos line. Because that's what he is. When you see him, he's gonna fuck shit up.
You say that, okay, but I would go back to All Hallows Eve. Art is not human.
Yeah,
Art is an entity, if you will. He is where you have someone like Freddy Krueger is a dream demon. You have the Shape, who is some sort of possessed being by the Thorn. Jason Voorhees is basically a killer zombie. Art is the closest thing I could say is a demon. Like, and you'll see this, and I've seen this in other clips. That is his fucking face. Yes, he puts white makeup on, but that is his fucking face.
Yeah.
He is that being.
And he looked like the facial structure does look demonic as it is. And what do you call it? Like, yeah, and then of course when he gets kicked out of the fucking thing and then he comes back, and that's when you know what movie you're in.
Well, before that, I would love to discuss the interaction between Art and Tara, and her blonde friend. They stop because they're lost at the pizzeria, I believe, or something along those lines. And Art's infatuated, if you will. I mean, that's the body language he gives off with Tara. And he looks and he's waving at her, and her inebriated friend. This is what kind of freaks me out. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Why would you even do this? She goes over and initiates contact with Art, sits on his lap, takes a selfie with him, and like he's not enjoying this at all. Like he's got a frown, a definite frown on his face. He's not a happy clown at this point.
Yeah.
And he's just looking at her with these blood-stained teeth, and it's just this like get off me look. This persists until he goes over to a quarter machine and pulls out a ring and gives it to Tara. Like you can tell that is the target for him. He looks at her and he's just, that's it for him.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, like, you know, and then it kind of foreshadows, especially with the looks, what like the brutality of the blonde friend later on.
Oh yeah.
And you could even say that for Tara because of the whole of maybe like not wanting him and all that. So when he decides to do all that, and again, for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, spoilers for the entire movie. This movie's not like even though we did spoilers for Batman, that came out last year. So this one's been 5 years old now. Fuck.
Yeah, but I mean, I want people to see it. Like I said, you run the program, but I would love for people to get those embraces. I don't want to ruin too much, but
we do have to talk about what is many consider the most famous scene in the movie, or infamous scene in the movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like when of course he gets kicked out of the place, and then when he comes back, that like I said this when I watched it for the first time, that's when you knew what movie you were sitting down and watching, because of the brutality of those people in that restaurant, of how he killed them. He turned, if I remember correctly, one of the guy's heads into like a pumpkin, basically.
He turned it into a jack-o'-lantern, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was some humor as well. So you see why he was thrown out whenever one of the workers at the pizzeria is trying to clean up the mess that Art made, and that's how you find out his name, because it's written in shit on the wall. AR. Yeah. The brutality of the kill in the kitchen, not without going into too much detail. Chayton said, as one of them, there's multiple kills in the pizzeria. He was turned into a fucking jack-o'-lantern. Let's just call it what it was. Yeah. His head was turned into a fucking jack-o'-lantern. But then it's on. It is hot and heavy. The rest of the fucking movie, and we're talking about, I want to say, an hour and a half runtime.
Yeah.
And this motherfucker is going. And for the next hour, it's just, well, the girls go out and their car's slashed, and
basically, the one girl has to go to the restroom, Tara, where she has to go and find this maintenance worker, basically, to let her in to use the restroom. While that's going on, of course, the blonde friend is in the car by herself, and she thinks her friend's coming back, but instead it's Art.
Oh yeah, like she's in the car, and he's stealthy. He's a big son of a bitch. Like I would say about 6 foot tall. He has the big floppy black shoes, and he gets in the car with her, and then you're like, oh shit, you don't see what happens yet, but you know that something's happened. And meanwhile, you have Tara in this, there's tires in the building. You can tell it's a factory of some sort.
Yeah.
And you see as she's walking around, she is introduced to this, let's just say, homeless woman who's not all there, who's clutching a doll.
Thinks it's her child.
Thinks it's her child, and is very just, thinks that Tara's her new neighbor, and it's an interesting dynamic. And there's humor to it, like, wow, this how is she, but some of it's like not conceivable. Like, how is this lady fucking camping out in this fucking warehouse? And
and also that lays instrumental to see kind of a different, like a small glimpse of Art in the different lights later on, which we'll discuss later.
Well,
which also leads to another.
I think that's him playing a game, to be fair. But
yeah, that could be. I've read different viewpoints of that scene, because it's like it's like, again, this movie and the second one have been very it's a horror enthusiast's dream just to analyze it, like from start to finish, analyze Art as a whole.
I think analyzing Art is a wrong idea for anybody. Like, that's a mistake you're making. He is the cheese have slid off that cracker a long time ago.
and so so he's like she's like talking also to a maintenance person, like and all that. Now Art finds her, and of course they go in a chase scene. Now the maintenance worker has either headphones or AirPods on or something, so he can't hear nothing.
But I think it's something we did glance over in the beginning of the film. You know, they're talking about a woman who survived a horrendous attack.
Yes,
a talk show, and they show this woman's face, and it is just mangled up and twisted. And your assumption is that she survived Art, right? Like that. That's, I mean, that's what I assumed, or something along those lines. But
yeah, same.
I've been privy to this, and I figured that this was her story, like, you know. And as you're watching, I feel like she was a victim, and he's out on the hunt again. That was my thought process.
Yes.
But back
to the fact, and then of course the lady going insane and basically mangling the talk show host.
Yes.
Afterwards and all that. So yeah, and then Art watching it and all that, which again, like I would really, since you watch it here, you probably got a good understanding, so you won't need to watch the second one, right? Because I'll say it like this: it basically picks up right after the final shot of the film.
Okay, so I'll watch that. Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind when I.
It's one thing I will also say is both of these movies, not the same with All Hallows Eve, but both of these movies are a good like marathon or double feature, because it's like you're watching what it's not like if a movie's like a sequel's a couple of years after the first one.
I'll give it the same treatment as like Halloween, the original Halloween 1 and Halloween 2.
Yes. That's basically the way I could describe it. Now, with the talk show thing and all that. So Art, of course, catches Tara and knocks her out and all that good stuff. And then we get to the most famous scene in the movie.
What you find, though, is that Art is a tricky little man. Like, he has a trash bag full of goodies. And, like, he likes to drug people. You learn this in All Hallows Eve. And building up, and it's part of this, too. He likes to inject people with fucking chemicals. He likes to fucking do these strange fucking things. And, again, I'll let you go into the fucking most famous scene of this whole movie.
Yes, and before I get into it, there like I've always said this with because I saw this movie before Terrifier. For anybody who got offended by this scene, thinking, "Oh, it's exploitation of women or whatnot," I'm going to go into a side tangent. There is a movie, a fantastic movie, called Bone Tomahawk. Came out a few years ago with Kurt Russell. It was actually a pretty good cast. It was Kurt Russell, David Arquette, Patrick Wilson. And they're basically being hunted by cannibalistic Native Americans. There's a scene in the movie, which honestly is more graphic than this scene, where a guy is basically, again, me being Native American, knows some of these traits, where there was a guy who was scalped, basically fed his scalp, forced it down his throat, and then hung upside down by two people with a bone saw, and they chopped him from his genitals down to, and then they literally yanked him apart. So I've always said, there's one for the men too. There is a scene for like this for the men as well, in terms of the brutality. And to me, that scene is a lot more gruesome due to the fact that they scalp him and feed him his scalp before they do the rest.
I'll argue that there are movies like Hostel and Saw that are far more gruesome and more intricate in their fucking design. I think the problem that people have with this film is that,
by the way, you should see Bone Tomahawk one day.
This film itself is that I think that it's straight to the fucking point. It's not a puzzle. It's not a game. Look, it's basically, you're not eating filet mignon here. You're getting a fucking sack lunch. You know you got a turkey sandwich in that bag, and it's going to be a turkey sandwich. They're not trying to pretend that this is a fucking 4-course meal. This is you in a paper bag, and enjoy the fucking ride or don't, you know? I like a turkey sandwich, you know, sometimes, okay? So sometimes I like a simple fucking turkey and cheese, and that's what this fucking movie delivers. And so when we're talking about this scene, do you mind if I kind of describe it a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Tara's been drugged, and Art shows up when there's a curtain in front of him, and he's got this smiling face, and he drops the curtain, and her friend is upside down naked. Like, I'm talking full nudity. And Art proceeds to take a hacksaw and cut this woman from her genitals down to her fucking head. Cut her clean in half. Like, it is, and there is no fucking room for misinterpretation about what's going on here. He just does it.
Yeah. And I remember when I first saw that scene, I'll admit, I was taken aback by just how graphic it was. And again, I liked it because, again, it's something we don't see that much. Maybe in some, like, the closest thing I could say we've seen stuff like this at that time was like foreign movies, like the what do you call it, the French Extremity that was in the early 2000s, like High Tension, stuff like that. But there was, like, to me, at least in American audiences, I felt for a period we were very neutered by, especially with practical effects. That's another thing I want to give this movie credit, is the practical effects in this movie is just top notch.
Well, with the budget they had, and when you told me how much they had, like, what, $250,000?
That was on the second one. I'm actually going to double check what the budget is for Terrifier.
For what they were able to accomplish with this is quite impressive. And like I said, this movie is basically, this is what we are. This is what we're about. You like it, cool. It is a throwback to that fucking 80s just punch to the gut style, but the kills are so fucking interesting.
Terrifier 1's budget was $35,000.
Okay, so that's even more impressive. The fact that they did this movie with $35,000, because again, you could tell it's meant to be a straight to DVD fucking horror flick, but it's fucking satisfying. It's almost humorous. It's not fucking, this is not, and people think too hard about this. Fuck it. I'm just going to say it. It is not about that this was a woman that got cut in half. It's someone that got cut in fucking half. It's not a big fucking deal, all right? It's a movie. You don't have to sit here and try to find that it's exploiting women. It is a clown, a demon clown cutting someone in fucking half, all right? Like, look, we've seen far worse, all right? You know what? I like Mortal Kombat, and the fatalities in that are far more gruesome, or if not up to par with this, okay? So chill out. It's a fucking movie. Enjoy it. Don't enjoy it. Tell people how you feel when you go to the box office and watch it. That's the best I can tell you to do.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing, like, and that scene again, it was just, and then also a throwback to earlier in the film when he takes a selfie with her corpse.
Yes.
That again shows the dark, fucked up sense of humor. And again, like we'll get into this in the because I am going to be in Terrifier 2. I will definitely be talking about my movie, the theater experience in that movie, because that was a very interesting thing. But like so after the Isis, she of course breaks free. Now, mind you, she's also during things some we may have forgotten is that earlier the Tara called her sister to come get them.
Yes.
So, of course, she's supposed to be on her way while this is all going on. And there's another chase scene during this. And it leads to me, I think, the funniest scene in the movie. When they're going at it, she's maybe getting the upper hand, but again, she does not. The dumb final girl mentality, or dumb survivor mentality. When they have someone down, they're beating them. They don't just continuously beat them and they just leave them be. So he, for some reason, has a gun, pulls it out, and it shoots her in the leg.
Which, okay, can we pause for a second? I literally remember stopping and going, "Fuck that clown! That's cheating." You're used to a fucking, and this is what I think that makes him different. And I think as a character makes him interesting. He's not conventional. Yes, he lulls you into a false sense of security, thinking that, oh, it's just another slasher. That's what this is. No, he has a fucking pistol holster, or an ankle holster, that he pulls a pistol out and he shoots her. What the fuck?
And at that point, he's not playing, because you see the look on his face when he's going over to her after that.
Oh, like, definitely. And I think that comes with his training as a mime, that you can tell when he's mad.
Yeah. And he goes up to her and then shoots her straight in the cheek, shoots her in the face. And surprisingly, she's still alive. So he goes, and mind you, the sister's like at the point where she's almost there. He goes and reloads. He has to go back. That's when he takes a selfie. If I remember correctly, that's when he takes a selfie, when he goes and reloads his gun.
But the motherfucker walks off camera. Like that's the whole thing that I find hilarious. Like she's laying there, and he had it's really good cinematography for a fucking $35,000 budget.
Yeah, and he goes and reloads, and in typical sense, you would think that the sister would get there in time and find her and get her out of harm's way. Nope. He goes, reloads the gun, he comes back, and he just unloads the entire the entire cap all on her face, where basically her face is unrecognizable at that point.
And I want to say this. This is about the hour mark of the film. And as we talked about when we talked about the Batman, they had caught the Riddler, and what are we going to do with that next 30 minutes? And I'm watching this like, wait a minute, everybody's dead. And then I'll let you lead us into that last 30 minutes. Oh,
yes. And then the sister comes in. And during that scene also, that's also when the homeless lady is missing her quote unquote baby. And so she goes, tries to find, she finds Art with it. And then she goes and fucking looks for tries talking to him and talk some sense into him and all that. And again, like we said earlier, about false sense of security. And then a few moments later, you see him completely naked with the girls, or actually first you see the girl come up to the sister with her scalp missing and her chest missing. And that's when you see him come in completely naked with the scalp on his head and the breasts on his chest.
Well, let's go back to the scene with the homeless woman.
Yeah.
She says, "Please don't hurt my baby," right? Like she's very adamant about not hurting this doll that she sees as her daughter. And she ends up getting Art in what seems to be a vulnerable position where he's basically sitting on the ground, like rocking back and forth,
sucking his thumb, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, and she starts touching his face and touching his head like a mother and calling him. And it's like, wait a minute, whoa! You're getting more depth to a character, and in my opinion, he's bullshitting her. He's being a mime. He's doing what he does best, and he's letting her believe that she's showing him, oh my God, this is the love that he's always wanted, and he only kills because he's never been loved. And but I'm sorry, like I kind of have a little more understanding of Art from watching All Hallows Eve and watching what he's done. I call bullshit. He's having fun. This motherfucker kills people, and he does it with a smile, a bloody smile on his fucking face. And so, as you said, Tara's sister arrives. She finds someone rolled up in a bag, and she's like, what the fuck? She's looking around. She sees hair. And it's not the homeless woman. Well, it is kind of. It's Art who had scalped the homeless woman.
Yeah.
But not only did he scalp her, right? Like he did, he could have just gone that route. No, not Art the Clown. He cut her fucking tits off. And he's wearing her tits and her fucking head or hair. And it's that over the topness that makes, at first I was like, this is horrible. This is a fucking disgust. But again, it's that subtlety that the actor brings to the character, and that the director and the story fucking give you. That Art is a fucking piece of shit. Yes, he's a killer. But beyond that, he uses a fucking gun holster. He shoots you with a gun. He's not fucking using bladed weapons or a fucking blunt object. No, he's a piece of shit. Like, he could have just scalped her and did that. No, he wore her tits. Fuck you, Art. You're a dick. At that point, that's where I'm at with him in the movie. He's a fucking dick.
I know. and it was just like that scene. It was like, to me, those were like the two most iconic scenes in the movie. That scene, and then the scene the funniest scene I've always said was the gun scene, just because of how left field it was. And again, I gotta give it to the humor, and because again, a lot of people like we talk about how gruesome and how brutal this movie is, but just the fucking humor, dark humor, yes. But again, I'm someone who likes dark humor. I will make jokes that probably would get me canceled left, right, and center. I'm not going to fucking deny it. Like shit, at work I make dark humor jokes. You know, I'm not fucking like, you know, I always say I find dark humor funny for me. But again, that's a very niche thing. Like you may watch it and think that's not fun, like not you entire, but the people watching may not think it's funny. But there may be someone else. And again, I'll be talking about that on the Terrifier 2 review about that, because yeah. But it's just I gotta give it to the humor in this movie. Very little humor, but humor nonetheless.
Well, I'll say it like this. You and I do another show called The Exiled Outcast, where we just got the recording an episode. We got a little bit fucking deep with some of the stuff. But basically, this movie equates to our sense of fucking like style. And basically, this is what we are. This is what this movie is. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself, eat a dick. And that's Art's mentality, I think, as a killer. Is like, he's a killer. He's a fucking monster. He's a demon. He's going to do Art things. And if you don't fucking like Art shitting in your fucking toilet, if you don't want to fucking watch Art shit, if you don't want to watch Art cut people in half, if you don't want to watch Art shoot you with a fucking ankle holstered gun, fuck you. Go watch some other fucking horror movie. It's not for you. And it's not pretending to be for you. It's just a fucking movie. And that's at the end of the day what this embodies. It's just a fucking horror movie that's different. And you know, again, we're getting closer to the point of the climax of the film and the big twist, but it's interesting. And somebody trying something different in a world of everybody wanting to remake Halloweens and fucking Jason movies and fucking Friday the 13th movies. This movie dares to be fucking different. And you know what? Cool. I think that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've always said. Some of my favorite movies of the last 5 to 10 years are those out of left field horror movies. Like one of my favorite horror films of last year was Barbarian. And that one, have you seen Barbarian?
Yeah, it's a fucking crazy fucking flick.
Because that also to me has that like that middle part where like you're in one area and then you just jump into a completely different area, and I'm like, fuck, that was some great filmmaking and just all that with that. Maybe one day we'll talk about that one. And by the way, Disney, if you're watching this, fucking release that movie on goddamn fucking physical media or fucking cheapskates. Dale Fox, that's why. Like I'm still salty. Like I'm at the point where I'm going to have to buy a bootleg of the movie just so I can have it, because I've like Terrifier has multiple versions on Blu-ray. I have the Steelbook, which actually has the girl hanging upside down the back of the Steelbook. I have the Steelbook of Terrifier. I have the Terrifier 2 Walmart exclusive. Yes, Walmart released a exclusive version of this movie on Steelbook. And then I have the 4K Best Buy exclusive 4K of Terrifier 2. One day when they release Terrifier 1 on 4K, I want to get down 4K. If I love a movie, if I enjoy it, I'm going to support the shit out of it, whether it's promoting it or buying the merch.
Well, speaking of promoting, we still have a fucking review to do. So
yes.
As that goes,
I get when I'm married, I get mad.
So Art attacks her with her fucking his scalp and is chasing after her. Continue.
Yeah, and then. Now there's also the maintenance worker who is there. His boss comes back, or comes to check on him. Now the boss, of course, he gets a pretty brutal death where he's basically decapitated very slowly.
And Art fucking takes joy in what he does, man. He just this hack. Like if you ever play the game Fallout, this Fallout series. Butcher Pete, man, he's just hacking and hacking and hacking.
Yeah.
And that's basically what Art does. He chops that fucking meat. That's what he does.
And then later on, while they're trying to get away, the maintenance guy, of course, he gets incapacitated. He comes back. He gets just stomped to no end.
Oh, yeah, his giant clown shoe stomps fucking the maintenance guy's head to fucking obliterate.
Yeah. And it gets to the end where Of course, there are cops being called, all that good stuff. And she's trying to escape and all that stuff.
Well, before it got to that, the reason they were able to call the police and they realized that they're not going to be able to wait for the police because Art had used one of his signature weapons, which is a chain with a bunch of sharp shit on it. He beat the shit out of her with that thing, and she's bleeding to death. The maintenance man realizes that they're not going to be able to fuck. She's not going to make it if they don't get out of there. And that's when Art shows back up, crushes his fucking head. She gets to a locked door. Art's still after her. And it seems like Art gave up. But this is Art the fucking clown. No, he didn't give up. He rams a car through the fucking door. This fucking asshole. He's a dick.
Yes. First a gun, now a car. And then another scene that I kind of found, and this is getting close to the end, another scene I found kind of comedical was when the paramedics and all that arrive and the police and all that. You see him doing something, and you kind of can you kind of know what he's doing, but it's still kind of left to interpretation at that point. Basically eating her, trying to eat her.
He's eating her face, man.
Yeah. Then he turns around and he realizes all these cops are here and all that. So he pulls out his gun and just blows his head off.
Straight up R. Kelly. That's when I pull out my gun, and he shoots himself in the fucking face.
Yeah. And then, of course, like at the very end, when the sister survives, and the twist is revealed that she was the woman at the very beginning of the film, the mangled face.
She was the mangled face woman who attacked the fucking talk show host.
Yeah,
that basically her experience with Art has made her insane, and I think that the premise is that she's going to continue his work. Like she's. Because to the viewer, you think Art's dead, right? Like you think he put a gun in his mouth and he's dead. And yeah, she's gonna continue his bloodshed. And
then the final scene of the movie, when they get the coroners to get the bodies into the morgue, and of course they unzip the Art one, he's smiling. And then the lights start to flicker. And this goes back to the supernatural demon tendencies that we mentioned previously. And then he rises up and grabs the guy by the throat, and that is how the movie ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Terrifier.
Now, I know that y'all have been used to a standard of where sometimes I'll talk about the frame of the movie. I like this way of doing it better. I think it just fits you and my style a lot better. Like I think that no different than what we do on the Exiled Outcast. Like we have to find our way of doing things. I fucking thought that this, like our description of this movie, the way it rocked, it's interesting. And I think that going forward, I think we should do it this way. I think it's just so much better. Because we're not giving away too much, but in the same breath, we're telling you about the fucking movie. It's interesting as fuck.
Yeah. And I've always said this. If a movie is a certain amount, like I wouldn't, for example, like if we both saw The Flash opening weekend, I would not want to do a review of The Flash if we talk about the like good parts of the movie because it's still fresh. But I've always said this. If a movie's been out for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, or longer, I'm like, yeah. If you haven't seen the movie, then I'll basically say, go watch it and then come back and watch it because if the movie's been years away, then I usually don't mind spoiling it. It's like in a video game or something like that. Even maybe a video game is different because it takes more hours than a movie or a TV show, for example. But yeah, definitely go see this. I believe right now it's on the Cock, right?
Yes, it's on the Peacock.
I know. The second movie's on there. It was originally only on Screenbox for a little bit. That was when it first came out. When it first came out digitally, that was like they were starting up a new horror streaming service, and they're like, "Hey, we got Terrifier 2. That's going to be where you first can see it digitally. Besides buying the movie or renting the movie, you can watch on Screenbox. But now it's on Peacock because after it did its little thing. But yeah, the movie again got a cult following." To the point where we now have a second movie and soon to be a trilogy, and where the sequel did like went through a lot of the pandemic had a hand in that delaying it, which actually Damien Leone said some of the scenes that were made that were in that movie were basically during the time of the pandemic where he had more time to think about what scenes he wanted. So, but yeah, that movie will be talking probably around the 1 year anniversary of when the Terrifier 2. So around October, Halloween time will be when we discuss the follow up to this movie.
But that makes sense. As far as a film, I guess I might go first this time. As far as the my rating of it, Terrifier, visual effects very, very amazing for a $35,000 film. Art the Clown is like he's amazing as far as an actor. But if you're not into this kind of niche thing, I get it.
This is for a very niche audience, but
I will say it is a interesting take on horror. I think there is some humor in it if you're into dark humor. But overall, like I said at the beginning of this, overall for your average viewer, I will give it a 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, only because of what it is. It is look. I find it to be an interesting flick. I do really. I will say high 2, 3 out of 5, but only because it's not for everybody. And when I think about movies like the movies we've discussed before, like I said Braveheart 5 out of 5. That is a fucking legendary fucking flick. That is a movie that is timeless and should be seen by everybody. This is not that kind of movie. This is definitely for me a 3 out of 5.
And I will probably, it's probably the one time will not be too far off. I'm going to give it purely on entertainment factor. And again, to say that this is not going to be for everybody. But for me, I will give it a 3.5 out of 5. So we're basically in the same ballpark for what's in this review, in the scoring department. Because what did I give Braveheart? Did I give it a 5 or did I give it a 4.5? I know I gave the Batman 5.
Yeah.
So we're around the same ballpark with this one as well. But yes, so that was Terrifier. We're still in the process of figuring out what the next we got lots of stuff we can talk about. So, but I'll be revealing the next episode or the thumbnail for the next episode next Wednesday. But before we go, I am going to show not only, some of you have already seen the thumb, or actually, no, you haven't. So this is going to be, I forgot. Everybody saw the Terrifier specific thing. So this is going to be exclusive here. I was trying to remember because I did post on my channel privately so I could see if it got copyright claimed or not. But also I'm going to show off the backdrop for what you can expect of what the show is like, what the thumbnails and the backgrounds are going to look like as well.
And the reason I'm sorry for the fucking the schizophrenic ass changing of the looks of things. I'm a fucking perfectionist. I want things to look nice, and because you brought me on board, I want to make sure that I give you my best. And so, like I said, as we move forward, there'll probably be more changes at some point, more color, whatever, what it may be. But I just want it to look nice. And Chayton's given me the opportunity. He's been a wonderful boss to give me that opportunity to use my creativity to, put it to the forefront. And I appreciate that.
Oh, yes. And I'm always someone who is about evolving as this show and Exiled Outcast has evolved. Like, I think Exiled Outcast has evolved now going to be 3 times. And this will be the second evolution of this show, which again, I hope you all enjoy the content we provide. And something I forgot to add into this Friday's Exiled Outcast. If you're listening to this, I'm going to try to start doing this every episode for both shows. If you're listening to this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or whatever, especially Spotify, if you would so kindly leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, tell us what you think, and leave us some ideas of maybe something that anybody would like to do. And I'm looking into doing some giving back more to the to the viewers and the listeners and future stuff, but that will be in due time. So, with that, anything else you want to add before I close us off?
No, it's always a pleasure to work with you. This has been a very busy fucking day as far as us being content creators and whatnot. Thank you for letting me join you on the journey. And, cheers to more Exiled Entertainment and more Exiled fucking as a brand. I hope it grows. And again, I just love doing this. It's a guilty pleasure.
Oh, yes. But with that being said, I am Chayton. This is Dan.
I'm Dan.
And we will see you next time. Take care.